Hello, everybody. Well, this is Inara, and I am with somebody who I've just got to know, gradually getting to know, the Queen, Courtney Fay Long. And we're having a blast. There's something that when I met this woman, we were so on the same level, and it's been easy and effortless, and we've laughed a lot. And so I just want to introduce you to her on Valentine's Day and ask her, hey, what do you get up to? Who are you, Queen Courtney?
Oh my gosh, Inara, I'm so happy to be here with you. Oh, yes.
Me
Would you
too.
like me to share who I am now?
Mm,
Awesome.
absolutely.
I am a leading edge sexuality educator and author and master's level social worker. And my passion is helping people feel turned on for life so they can be happy, turned on, and rich. Rich in all ways.
Woo. Well, no mean feat then, right?
I think that's right. Yes.
It's like quite a fabulous calling that you have.
Mm,
And one of the places that, how I ended up with this is because, of course, this series of interviews and experiences I'm running as the Queen's Pleasure, which is, as you know, the arousal oil that I created. And so everybody who is speaking on this summit or this show are talking about aspects of pleasure. And Courtney really is hitting some very powerful energy, I feel. So why don't I just let you, how did you get there? What's the connection for you between how did you get to working with sex and then how is sex connected to money?
yes. Well, I have been teaching for 25 years and all different topics: angels, life purpose, money, abundance, intuition. And I kept finding that so many women, especially, struggled with self doubt and lack of confidence. And they'd get all this clarity of what their purpose was, but they weren't taking action on it. And I was just puzzled by it. At the same time, I was having this spiritual, sexual awakening behind the scenes. And it was all for me just complete chance or divine alignment. And I literally just happened to have a lover that when we made love, I just say, the stars sparkled and angels sang. And I went to these other realms of bliss and pleasure and ecstasy that I didn't know was even possible. And then he broke up with me 6 months later. I was devastated because, at the time I thought it was him. I thought, oh my gosh, I discovered this most amazing thing and now I'll never have it again. Which then took me the next year to a sexuality retreat. And then I discovered, oh, actually, our sexual energy is our life force energy, our creative life force energy. And some people call it Kundalini. I call it sexual fire. And I realized I have this inside of me, no partner required. And it just completely changed my life. So while I was teaching all these other topics behind the scenes, I was doing burlesque dancing, boudoir photo shoots, having all these beautiful, sacred sexual experiences. And I realized how much more confident I was becoming, more creative. I was, basically magnetizing amazing opportunities to me because of this internal glow of my sexual fire. So then I decided I've got to incorporate this in my teachings. I have to help other. This is the missing secret that so many women have not really been turned on to yet. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And then
I want to just dive in just at that moment because we've got a long time to talk, but I want to just tell you a parallel for me that was quite surprising to me. And I've mentioned it before on Instagram or whatever, in little snippets. But what happened was I was not in a relationship for a very long time. I ended up with a very nasty breakup, I would say 20 years ago, where at the same time of that, I realized I was not going to have children. So I was devastated. It was like it was all wrapped into one that man with his child that I looked after, we were going to be the family. I was going to have kids with him, etc. And when he left, I fell apart. And actually, it led through the years where I knew that I wasn't going to have children. So there was
Mm.
this big healing piece because I always wanted to be a mum. I'm really okay about it
Mhm.
now. You couldn't pay me to be a mother now. But
Sure.
I didn't come into this world, thinking that I was a businesswoman and I didn't want kids. It was never like that. I always wanted children. So when that dream went down, it took me a long time to pick myself up. And when I looked around at who was available, I didn't really dig the guys that I was seeing, right? That something had
Sure.
happened in that time. In a way, the pleasures of youth where you can be lighter about it. It got heavier because I'd landed it with, this destiny has ended for me. So the men that
Mhm.
I met were really not a fit for me. And one of the main things was they were missing a spiritual angle. I might be
Mm.
attracted to them, but then when we got to talking, there was nothing. So roll on. Um, I had not 20 years. I'd had these hit and miss little interactions with men, but they were not a relationship and they were not totally satisfying. And I came to the conclusion, like, how can I can't give up the sexuality for me, even though I know couples who they hardly have sex, but they're
Mhm.
in coupledom. For me, it was the other way around. If I want a friend, I'll have a friend. But if I'm going into a relationship, it's got to have sex as part of
Yeah.
it. It has to.
Same here. Same here.
So as those things weren't happening, I ended up on this sort of loose end of thinking, well, I've just got to increase the pleasure in my life. It has to happen because
Mm.
that's who I am. Thus, I went on the journey to create this aphrodisiac oil. In a way, I was focused on it as a business. It was like, okay, I've got to do all the designs and all of this. Never been creating product before. And then I started using it. And the more that I started using it, yes, it's an aphrodisiac because it's got ingredients which stimulate blood flow. However, what started to happen was that I was ritualizing my own pleasure. It
Mm.
wasn't the same as just going off and having a play with oneself. It was actually this quite deliberate ceremonial kind of woo, I've got the oil, I'm going to use this and feel turned on and then, have fun myself. And from
Mhm.
that point on, men started looking at me differently in the street.
Mhm.
Then I was starting to meet different guys who were like, really, oh, this is actually a kind of guy that I would really like to be with. They were often unattainable at the beginning, and then it started to switch. I started to meet men, and I still have it. Like, it is surreal. The more focus that I've put on my sexuality, the more in the world, even though I did it as a business, the more
Mhm.
in the world I'm getting the direct response from the universe now. So I
Wow.
just wanted to add that in because it's very parallel to what you're saying.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it really is, and it's something that science actually backs up, which I think is fascinating. There's all kinds of research studies that show that sex, even if it's not spiritual, soulful, just sex is what the research has done, is that sex increases our happiness, our confidence, our health in numerous ways. It can help reduce anxiety, help us sleep better at night, prevent long-term things like heart disease, prostate cancer. And it also, this is where I think it gets extra fascinating, that sex can boost our creativity because of an increase in dopamine. And it can also increase our productivity at work. And with all of these things, more confidence, creativity, happiness, health, productivity, we can make more money. And there was even one really large study done in Germany with 7,500 people that found that the higher someone's sexual activity, the higher their wages at work, which is so cool. Isn't that fascinating? So
It's
it's like these
totally,
things that, yeah, it
totally
sounds like you and
amazing.
I both experienced. And then it's so cool that science backs that up.
So I bumbled into this, you know, on my path. I bumbled along and started noticing this effect that was happening that wasn't really just about, yes, it's about the sensory experience. It's about putting myself first. It's
Mm.
about spending time with myself. And at the time, really, I do want a relationship. I hands down, I'm still saying, and I've got something going on now, so I cannot really bring that into this conversation. But for years, I was banging my head against a brick wall. It seemed like I couldn't get a breakthrough in the relationship thing
Mhm.
at all.
Mhm.
But the
Mhm.
more that I've focused on the sex thing, because it was almost like, well, you know what? If I'm not going to meet a man who's of the caliber that I want,
Mhm.
I'll be single. I'll be solo. That's
Sure.
okay because I'm not going to settle, right? And
Yes. Good.
even the context of thinking, well, if it doesn't happen in this life, and I actually believe in reincarnation. So I'm like, well, if this is a chapter, as reincarnation can be in many lives, as you're going
Mhm.
along to learn something, I'm okay with that. It's not like saying I don't want a relationship. It's just like saying the only kind of relationship I want is quite a high caliber and it has to involve spirituality. So I was replacing the anxiety of being on own by, okay, I'm going to make this a great ride. What do I need to
That's
do?
That's
And it,
amazing. Oh my gosh, that's so inspiring. And usually that is when the partner can come in when we are relaxed about it because I've coached a lot of people around meeting their soulmate and sometimes they get so desperate that it almost that energy kind of pushes the person
yeah.
away. And so then the moment we let go and relax is usually when the person comes in. And interestingly, I've had people tell me they say, well, I'm single. Courtney, I'll take your sexuality class when I meet my partner. And I say, oh, no, no, no. I mean, well, of course, they can do what they want, but no, no, no. It's actually, this is the perfect time is to work with, one's own, your own sexual energy, your sexual fire, and bring that energy from the yoni, from the root chakra, all the way up to the heart, all the way up to the third eye and the crown chakra, so that we literally glow with our own essence. Because I actually say that our soul essence is our sexual energy. Sometimes people say, oh, spirituality, sexuality, they go hand in hand, and they do, to the extent that that creative life force energy that is our sexual energy, it's our soul essence flowing through our physical body. It's like the closest we can get to God, source, spirit, universe, like our bridge to the divine, to love. So when we're glowing with this magnetism of our soul light, it's like, well, we're a lot more magnetic for one thing. And then we're going to attract the right partner. Like you said, not settling. Like, a lot of people have that pattern of attracting the same type of person who's not really good for them over and over. And it's like when we embody our sexual fire, that is what helps us break through that pattern and actually be able to attract the person who can meet us in our power. Because that's another huge part of it, right? Is when we're in our sexual energy, we're so powerful, so powerful.
Totally. I mean, I'd like to ask you your thoughts about. I was having a conversation the other day with Laurie Rising, who is also on the interviews for Valentine's Day. And I was
Mhm.
saying to her, there's something that I think is a bit of a myth about sexuality is all about youth. And for me, it's gotten better, 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 better. And it's the best now. Like, I'm not saying I'm end of life, but I'm saying I am not
Getting better.
a little twinky teenager where I couldn't ask for what I wanted. It was,
Right.
all of that. So, thoughts on that? What do you
Oh my
think
gosh,
about the
it's a
aging process?
complete myth that sex is for youth. And yeah, and the cool thing is even when we're in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, a lot of times we focus on what's more important and we make more time for sex. Even though maybe in our younger ages, like in our 20s, our hormones were more hormonal driven. We're like, oh, must mate because we are craving it so much. So then once we go through perimenopause and menopause, our hormones shift. So it's not the same drive, but it's more of a heartful, soulful desire to connect. And women can be wildly wet at any age. And when I very first started teaching sexuality, I was just blown away. I thought, oh, I bet y'all have a bunch of women in their 40s. And the majority of the participants were in their 60s and 70s.
Love it.
Isn't that awesome?
Love it. Yeah.
Yep.
Actually, I do know a woman, and at some point I'll probably be speaking to a woman I met who was super fabulous. And when I met her, she was in a 12-year relationship. She had a previous one where she had all the kids had grown up and all of that, and
Uh-huh.
they split up. And then she'd met this other one, and she was in a 12-year cycle with him, and it was all very like appropriate and formal, and it was, but even when she was speaking to when I first met her, I got this resistant edge, like there's something
Mhm.
not flowing. About 2 years after I met her, next thing I hear, she's left him. And I thought, oh, good, because there was something definitely not working there. And then
Sure.
I said, what are you up to? She said, I'm dating like mad, dating like mad. Now, at that point, she must have been, I don't know, 68 or something.
Oh, nice.
And shortly after, met the guy she calls the love of her life. And I've just seen on their Facebook, they've been together now for, I don't know, maybe 2 years. She said they
Wow.
had the best sex. It's like they're doing all these crazy outfits. You've seen them on the road. They've traveled everywhere. They've done all of it. And she is a
Oh,
sex
wow.
therapist. And it was like, even in her own life as a sex therapist, in a way, it's like she had to break out of her own restraints, to get to the love of her life. And she met him
Wow.
late. Yeah.
Oh, incredible. Yeah.
Totally incredible. It's totally inspiring. And another
Yeah.
thing I'll mention, because it is Valentine's Day, and those who feel the pangs of like you're not getting what you want, I heard an interview of somebody who was talking about octogenarian sex, like sex in your 80s. And not that you hopefully
Love
have to wait that long, but there was this great woman who just said, I got married and it was all fine. We had the kids and whatever. And then he died in his 30s. And she said, then, and sex was okay. It was fine.
it.
It was like the
Mhm.
mating dance. But she said, but then I met somebody late 50s and he was a lot better. And,
Wow.
we did all this through menopause, whatever. And then she said, and then he died. And then she met the guy who was the best ever. Now, she may have met him at 68, something like that, but they
Mm.
were in their 80s and they had sex every day,
Oh,
every day.
wow.
And she said, we're like wrinkly old prunes. We know each other, every crease of every part of us. We know that. And
No.
we just have sex. And she said, the thing is that we can't tell anybody of our friends because they stop thinking sex is even possible, right? And this
Wow.
was
Yes.
octogenarian sex. So,
Wow, that's incredible. Well, and what's so cool is that our basically our sexual arousal changes in our late 30s to early 40s, where earlier in life it's spontaneous, right? We're just maybe turned on, horny, just because our body's craving it. Whereas then once we hit late 30s, early 40s, it's more of that responsive desire where we get turned on because there's a stimulus there turning us on, or because we want to connect with our partner. And it works this way for men too. So past 40, men need a little extra help with erections, and it's normal for an erection to wax and wane even through a meaningful experience. And it's not always erectile dysfunction. Sometimes it's just a normal flow of energy. So it's just basically more foreplay can help so much, which is amazing because I just say that sex is all about connection. It's not just about the intercourse. It's just the whole experience. So if we're enjoying ourselves more with flirtation, cuddling, talking, kissing, all forms of foreplay, touching, oral sex, and just really taking our time with that, then usually we then respond with more desire and more arousal. And the average woman needs 20 to 40 minutes of warm up time before she's ready to be entered, which is a lot of time. So just saying, if anyone has a Valentine's Day date in mind, I highly recommend taking your time with a sexual experience, and even thinking of not just what are you doing in bed together, but think of all day foreplay. Every single thing you do is foreplay. Taking the trash out, sending a flirtatious text message, all of it contributes to feeling turned on. and just think of sex as connection from the heart and from the genitals, but you're literally dancing with that person's soul. Or if you're doing it by yourself, with your own soul. It's like a dance with the divine, a dance of souls intimately intertwined in this sacred dance of love. So enjoy it and be as present as you can. I think that's the best Valentine's Day date ever, is a long, luxurious lovemaking session, whether by yourself or with a partner.
I'm so down with that. I mean, I think Valentine's Day probably brings up a lot of stuff for people.
Yeah.
No, we laugh. A best friend of mine and I went on, it was a Valentine's Day yoga thing. And we were the only couple. Well, we weren't a couple. We were just best friends who went along amongst all these, deeply meaningful couples who are looking into each other's eyes. But we
I
just did the
love
yoga. We just did the yoga as two girlfriends together. And I do remember thinking, that there would be moments I don't really experience loneliness. Like I know that's an urge that they hit loneliness and then that causes them to do something. It's often causes them
Yes.
to go dating on these dreadful dating sites sometimes. I had no luck with it whatsoever, but I would think, I'm not doing anything. I need to do something. What do I need to
Mm,
do? Oh, well, pick up the app, Bumble or Hinge or whatever. And
sure.
I experienced, like, honestly, sorry, I know some people have got together with the love of their life. Mine was like a comedy of errors, all of it. Um, the last one, after going out with men or connecting with them, where they
Mhm.
would do things like, seem to attract a lot of military, like
Mm.
military is the most turn off for me. A man in a uniform, like I have no interest whatsoever in war. So don't give me a man. They would send me pictures of guns, them, posing up against trees with a rifle, whatever. I was like, oh my God. The last one that I went on after about 30 dates, and I really could write a book about this. I was going to an art gallery in London. It was a hot day, the Saatchi Gallery. And as you
Mm,
go there, there's columns in front of leading you down towards the gallery. And it was
mhm.
so hot and bright. I was wearing tiny little shorts, a really sexy little outfit, whatever. I'd seen his picture. I thought he was hot. It was all of that. Sunny. But as I walked from each column, it would blast me with like light so I couldn't see.
Mm.
Then I would be plunged into the darkness, then light, then dark. And as I go along like this, I can't see very well, but I see in the distance, I'm like, no, that can't be. It can't be. And then I'd be blinded, then I'd be back into the dark. I'm like, oh my God, but he's actually wearing the outfit that that he said he was. But this man is, I would say, I don't know, late 70s. And what he's presented is something like 40s. So,
Oh,
and I'm walking
oh,
along and this is happening. I'm being blinded, then I'm seeing, then I'm blinded, then I'm seeing, and then I go, oh my God, it is him. And
oh.
he's lied about everything. He's an old man. And I thought, I just want to jump behind this column and disappear. And just at
Sure,
that moment, he said, Inarra? And I went, "Ugh," like I have to be with him because I'm polite. So I
sure.
spent an hour of torture, just
Wow.
thinking you've completely faked this. Like you've put in a
Right.
photograph. Yeah. Like you're so not who you are. But after that, I said I can't do this anymore. I'm not lonely in
Mm,
that way of I need to, have somebody as a partner.
mhm,
I'll never
mhm,
settle. And so then I took myself off and worked with a tantric healer for 3 years. And she gave me the
mm.
homework. You cannot touch that app. Do not, do
Wow.
not touch the app. When you're going into that thing of, oh my God, I need to do something to
Yeah,
look like
right.
I'm willing. She was like, no way. We're going to do all the internal work. And that's exactly what I did. I can't recommend it enough.
That's beautiful. Oh my gosh. Yes. And especially like you said, it's the kind of the loneliness that then leads to, oh, I got to check the app. I've got to be doing something rather than just even being with
Being.
yourself, perhaps. Yeah, I'm just being. Exactly. Which is our feminine energy, is being. It's that masculine energy that's like, I got to do, I got to go, 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 which is why so many women are disconnected from their bodies, because we're in this society of masculine, 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 and not fully honoring our bodies actually like to just chill out, right? And just, yeah, and good for you for doing all the internal work, because a lot of people resist that, which is why they keep searching almost, outside themselves for the connection. But it's almost like if we don't build up our inner capacity for love and connection, if we don't feel that inside of us, we won't feel it when the partner is there. We'll constantly need reassurance. Do you love me? Or, just do that kind of anxious avoidant dance kind of thing. And it's not, a lot of people say you got to love yourself before someone else can love you. And I say, well, yes and no. It's not quite that simple. It's, for me, it's more about, we got to embody the feeling of love before we can feel the feeling of love reflected back to us from a partner, which is where the sexual energy comes in. Is that really helps us to feel love when we're really glowing with that love from our sexual fire.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, do you want to say anything about, I don't know, anything? Valentine's Day, thoughts about sexuality, money and sex, your TED talk, anything?
Oh gosh, yes. So I feel like there's something else around Valentine's Day I'm just feeling into, is I this is it. It's it's about giving ourselves what we need and looking very deeply into what that might be that we need. So if someone's single and they're saying, "Oh, I'm, lonely and I want to have a partner," it's really looking deeply at what do you need and what can you give yourself and what can you call in from a partner. And then for those in partnership, another thing that's so important is that the number, at least in the US, the number one thing that couples bring to sex therapy is mismatched sexual desires, when one wants it more than the other. And I work with a lot of women who want more sex than their partner. And then all of the things that come up around that, because, many of us are socialized that we shouldn't ask for sex. We shouldn't initiate. We're women and we're supposed to just be kind of soft and demure and, wait for the man to initiate. And even though I know that's also kind of an older set of teachings, yet I grew up with it. I'm in my mid 40s and I very much grew up with that mentality that I shouldn't initiate. So anyway, just saying, if you're in a situation like that, if anyone watching has a great relationship, but you're not on the same page sexually, then have a great conversation with your partner where you chat about, what do you really need? And is it that one of you is craving more connection, or maybe you're both craving connection? And if one of you wants sex once every 2 weeks, the other one wants it every day, then what would be a compromise to meet in the middle? Maybe, I don't know, I have to think about the math on that, but 3 times a week, maybe?
Yeah, bargain.
Once a week, even?
Yeah.
But yeah, but just really talk about it and feel into the deeper needs, because when we're in relationship, it's a wild ride, really, because on some sense we're responsible for meeting our own needs, and we can self pleasure, like Anar's talking about, right? Having a beautiful, meaningful self pleasuring experience and incorporating the beautiful queen's pleasure oil, the arousal oil. Yes. And when we are in partnership and wanting to make love to our partner, there's almost this, I don't know if I want to call it a responsibility, but just an honoring. How can we honor each other? Meet in the middle. The lower desire partner has a little more sex than they might want to, and the higher desire partner has maybe a little less, but then supplements with more self pleasure. And just these conversations can bring up so much, because it could be that both partners are searching for meaning and connection. And it's not about frequency. It's just like, let's connect from the heart. Let's make this a more soulful spiritual experience.
Yeah, and other things like I can imagine the romance factor.
Yeah.
I've been out with some people in the past who had no romantic vibe, right? It just wasn't part of their thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm such a romantic. So somebody buying me flowers or having a bubble bath together or, just walking in a beautiful park or something like that. All of that is more meaningful to me than necessarily having what is considered like a quickie, you know.
Yes.
I would put more value. It's and you need to get to know what really turns you on. And I think that's the thing with aging. When I was younger, I could not speak. Some of the words were ghastly because they're all I was talking about the word vulva. I cannot say it without doing this face, vulva. I had to even write it on here, like instructions. I was like, oh, do we have to use the word vulva? Because I want to use pussy. But
Uh-huh.
you know, like we had to get a bit technical on it. And all of the words like that make me cringe. So when I also didn't have a light, playful capacity to speak as an adult and talk about pussy, something like that, which
Mhm.
actually is the vibe that works for me. It keeps it
Mhm.
sexual. I couldn't say anything. And so my
Mm.
younger years were, like, how do I say 2 inches to the right and miss out the vulva word, right? So then I wouldn't say anything like the vulva. Like, can we ban that word? Whoever came up with these words, they are cringeworthy, right? So I think it makes it almost more awkward trying to speak technically to like your penis,
Yeah.
and then penis is another one. It's a really stupid word. One day I'll
Yeah.
have to look at what are the root, what's the root cause of these words. And ironically, I don't want to use the word get ready for it, cunt. Now over here, it's used as a slang. The Brits swear a
Mhm.
lot more than Americans, right? They really
Mhm.
do. It's quite a street
Mhm.
thing, even amongst posh people. But the interesting thing is that cunt actually comes from a very, very sacred lineage. It's goddess language,
Mhm.
kunta. And there were sacred sites where kunta was revered, and it was always the source of water. So it's water blessing
Mhm.
sites. In other words, the ushering out of water, the gushing of water was where her, sacred sites were and where she was worshipped. And that's been
Mhm.
derivative. You can see all the different derivatives that it comes. Now it's used, like in South London, which is
Mhm.
real street slang they speak. And one of my best friends is from there. And they'll say, I invited her brother once to an afternoon party in, I'm showing you this way, but in the garden. And I was inside making some little hors d'oeuvres or whatever. And I'm hearing like, how are you doing, you cunt? And I was like, oh my God, no, like, no, stop. And I said to her, you've got to go and control him. Like there are people here who really don't want to be spoken to like that. But it would be friendly. It's actually a friendly, kind of edgy way of speaking, Well, I
Yeah.
can't use that word in sex. It just doesn't work for me at all. But that is one of the most sacred ones.
Very interesting. I love that. I wish I had the details of this. I know for one of my classes, I went into the history of the word pussy, and
Ah,
originally it was actually a term of endearment. I can't remember from the 1200s or 1300s.
yeah.
It started in a very positive way, and then somewhere along the lines became more of a derogatory term, and then of course in our more modern times being reclaimed as a very beautiful, empowering word. And sometimes, like, I like the word pussy. I like sacred pussy. I like, sometimes I just soften it a little and call it poussey because I think that sounds even more fun. Isn't that lovely? And
Yeah.
so I love it. But it was funny when I first started teaching about sexuality. My class was the magic of the sacred pussy. And I went into all the history, but then some people are just so turned off by the word that, I still just, there's just no perfect word, and I just always tell people, find whatever, like you're saying, what turns you on and what word best describes, of course, your own body, whether it's yoni, vulva. And I mean, a lot of people don't know this. The vagina is the internal part, it's the internal cave, and the vulva is the external tissue. So those words are both used, but they're not perfect because they don't encompass all of it. Sometimes I say sacred genitals, there's a gajillion words, but yeah, I mean, it's all about finding, like you said, like finding what turns us on, because that is what is going to light us up and is going to light up our soul and open our heart and have us leaning in to wanting to make love.
And tell us a little bit about how you ended up doing your TED Talk, which I have
Yes.
watched.
Oh my gosh, my TED Talk. It was all divine guidance. I've always wanted to do a TEDx talk, but I was very guided to apply to this stage in Ireland, and I was accepted. And my talk is called Money and Sex. Sorry, Money and Sex, the Surprising Connection. And Napoleon Hill wrote about this in his book, Think and Grow Rich, and he has a whole chapter called Sex Transmutation. This book was released in 1937. So he was so brave to talk about it, but his explanation was awful. I mean, he didn't explain how it worked. He just kind of kept going on and on about how when a man is attracted to a woman, it leads or lifts him up to new creative heights, and then he's more inspired to make more money. And a little bit more explanation that is just to me a mess. So I was really determined to figure out how this all works. And then I pulled in some of this scientific research that's been done, like I talked about earlier: happiness, health, confidence, creativity. But it was my own experience that the more I really lit up my own sexual energy inside myself, I was more confident. And there was one night I was teaching at this local private college, and I love teaching. It's my passion. But I'm just someone I've always vacillated between self-doubt and confidence. And so one night I said, you know what? I am going to teach from my pussy. I'm going to teach from my yoni and like really be anchored there. And I can't even describe, Inara, how much more confident I was. It was like I wasn't in my head questioning, shouldn't say that, shouldn't say that. I was just in my power teaching. And I was like, what a gift for the students, right? And for me, it was a lot more fun to be in my confidence. But the information that was coming through was just beautiful. I was so grateful. So there's just so much to this connection of sex and money. And especially for us women, I mean, men too, but especially us women, we have just been overall so repressed around wanting more, our desires, whether it's desiring money, desiring more sex, just anything that we desire. And I say our desires are a call from our soul. It's almost just like intuition. If you want a piece of chocolate cake, maybe you're needing a treat, or maybe your body's craving magnesium from the chocolate on a more practical level. But it's like if you're craving to make more money, that is something to honor, because we women, we're meant to be highly sexual and highly abundant. And I've heard so many women over the years say, oh, I don't need too much, just enough to cover my bills and maybe a little extra. And I just feel like that's all been so programmed into us to think that, oh, just my basic needs. Because, like, how outrageous would it be if each of us women had way more money than we need? And just imagine all the cool things we could do with the overflow. Help out this special cause, sponsor this person's new business, help our family, our community. So we would do great things with the overflow. So it's like on a soul level, what if we're being guided to make a lot more than we need? Because we need more money in the hands of caring people with big hearts who are going to do good things with that money.
I'm so with you on that level. When I first started teaching, my background is very spiritual. I got trained as a high priestess in Britain and initiating people. So it was like
Wow,
deeply weird path. And
that's
it was
amazing.
all about Western ancient spirituality. And so in that path, women lead the coven, women lead the groups. So you speak to the high priestess as the main leader. The men,
Mm,
the high priest bolsters her. They have
mm,
power for sure, but it's this pushing the feminine forward. So
mm,
I had a background of of witnessing a very different role. I have a mother who is a doctor, and nothing stopped her. Like so she was a woman who was always, and I have a father who is incredibly compassionate, um, kind of rebel, really, who
Mhm.
has always said, do whatever you want. It's like I've never
Mhm.
ever had the, I would say, negative kind of, feminine restraint or whatever. But
Mhm.
as I moved forward, they didn't understand that path at all,
Mm,
especially my mum. It was just like
sure.
really out there. And I realized how deep the calling was. I had that from when I was a
Mm,
child living with my grandmother, who was very psychic and alternative in that way. And so I followed that path. And then at a certain point, and I did yoga as well, parallel. I did the East and the West at the same time,
mhm.
both deeply spiritual. And then I was working as a professional photographer. That's how I made my money. And there was a certain point which I really have come to honor now when I know a cycle is ending. It's like, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, just between us two, that
Mhm.
there's been a cycle that's just ended for me. I'm really good at going, oh yeah, this is ending. And at that time, nobody could understand, because it was like, how can you give up a successful photography career, not one that I'm floundering in, one that's completely successful and I like and I enjoy, but there was something that I was not enjoying anymore. Partly it was like working on my own all the time, the late hours in the night of uploading and stuff like that. Anyway, I came to this place where I felt it so deeply. My hand is going to heart, but I could go lower. Like it was just the creativity had dried up.
Mhm.
And I stood at New Year's, it was just before actually Christmas Eve, working that final night, standing in this posh flat, which was like James Bond style that I'd been photographing, looking out the window, and I went, that's it. Like, I'm not coming back to this job in the new year, and nobody knows it. And I'm not telling anyone, because I don't know what the next piece is. And
Mm.
so I made the decision very, very firmly to self. Then, of course, I went and enjoyed Christmas and all of that. But about 3 days into that time of year, I received an email, and it was from a group of coaches. But the first statement on it was, do you want to change your life? And I was like, yes, I do. It was like this sort of yes, massive yes. So I filled in all the form, sent it off. Next day, I got a call from somebody in the States. And I had this incredible conversation with this guy, but he was like, you filled in this form. Do you realize what a calculated risk taker you are? And I said, no, I have no idea. And he said, you're a calculated risk taker. You fulfill on everything to do with being an entrepreneur. We want to invite you into this program. There's 4 options. And one of them was property. I said, okay, let's do it. I spent 3 months training with him. The next thing, the homework was to go buy a flat in 3 months. And I was like, all of that, but calculated risk taker. So I was like, okay, like, let's figure this out.
Wow.
And the
Wow.
next thing, I ended up working in this for about 5 years, and I ended up with a 10 million pound um, portfolio. Now, this is somebody who wasn't interested in money. My parents are academics. They're more into academia than money. I don't get
Mhm.
rewards for money ever. I get rewards for my brains. And yet I took this journey on my own.
Wow.
And so the biggest thing that I learned was, actually I'm doing this in a spiritual way. I would go
Mm.
into flats, I would feel them out. Is this the right one? The right energy. All my decisions were made like that. It was all emotional. In human design, I have an emotional authority. So I choose emotionally what I'm doing. And
Mm.
then I found, to my surprise, after a long time, that energy that I used to see in creativity, in photography or spirituality,
Mhm.
just then flowed into property. I could see through the
Nice.
walls. I could see how the creative thing could happen. And it's gone on and on and on like that. It's like this flowing of self expression at a very high level, I think, honoring self,
Mhm.
And so I then became this advocate for spiritual and money coming together, money and spirituality. And when I first started mentioning it, because I'm older than you,
Mhm.
I had hate letters sent to me by the yoga community. How
Wow.
dare you mention money in the same, this sacred path? And people are, oh, it's like it's more authentic to be poor and all of this
Oh,
rubbish.
wow, sure.
Equally, you would get people like you say, who, oh, I've got enough, it's just enough and it's fine. I
Mhm.
don't, yeah, you know, but I could feel the resistance coming off them. Like, you've been trained that way, because little kids aren't like that. They're like, I want it all. I want to be
Yes,
an astronaut. I want to be
yes,
a, whatever, race car driver. They don't go, oh, well, I'll, just take a little bit of that.
that's
It's
so
not so.
true. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just this, I think we've walked a similar path on that level of kind of
Yeah,
understanding the dynamics of money there. So it's very interesting to me.
it is. It's so interesting. Yeah, and just there's so much wrapped up in both of these topics, money and pleasure and sex. It's just there's and so many limiting beliefs, but it goes beyond just beliefs. It's just this in the fabric of our society of how do I say that? It's almost like we limit ourselves unconsciously from this beautiful, amazing life that we could be living. And also just kind of even back to the love topic there, that sometimes we limit ourselves of how love can come to us, that it has to be through this partner. And then there's a lot of people practicing polyamory and having multiple partners or loves or lovers, and breaking that mold. And even if someone is monogamous, there's so many ways to love, whether it's loving nature, loving the neighbor, or here in Phoenix, Arizona, where I live, we have a really active cuddle community
Do
with,
you?
yes, it's
I've never
amazing.
heard of that.
Yeah, there's two different kinds actually. One is just simply platonic cuddling. All clothes on, and it's just for the healing benefit of touch. And strangers will come together. There's sometimes official cuddle parties. And I can't remember right now the names of the founders, but if you look up official cuddle party, there's these happen all over, at least in the States. And then there's another kind of cuddle party where people keep their clothes on, they still cuddle, but sexual energy is welcome. So if someone gets turned on, they can, express that through sound or through movement. It can be very sensual, but still clothes on, no sex happening, just
Yeah.
the energy. It's so nourishing. So I just think, to me, the reason I brought this up is because there's so many layers of connection that are possible for us that we just haven't even seen yet.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. So I guess we're coming to the moment when we're ending this section, but what I want to do is just say Courtney is going to be running her, let's let you say it.
Sure,
What are you going to run for the
I'm going to
Valentine's Day?
run for Valentine's a glow practice that is so beautiful. It's called the Glow Light Switch, and it's basically a meditation, a little bit of energy work that I'll guide you through. And we're going to tune into the light in your heart. We're going to tune into the light in your pussy, your yoni, whatever word resonates with you, and create this deep connection from your heart to your yoni. And you'll be able to feel that glow. It's just going to be beautiful. So you'll fill yourself with love through that glow practice.
Great. And she's going to record that in her own. That's why we didn't want to do it as a runoff from this interaction that we're having. This is a
Mhm.
one off. I think it's a great conversation amongst women. I just love these kind of crazy conversations that we can have. I want to wish you all an amazing Valentine's Day. Don't be lonely. Go and do something for yourself. Buy yourself a flower and do all of the above. Go to a cuddle party, start the cuddle movement in Britain if you're here. The
Yes.
sky's not even the limit. So thank you so much. It's been just a total pleasure speaking
Oh
to
my
you.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
Inara, thank you so much. I'm so grateful and just so grateful to have connected with you. And also, just one more little shout out to your
One more shout
incredible
out. Yeah,
Queen's Pleasure
girls,
arousal oil.
boys.
This
It was created for girls, but boys can use it too. And we will be connecting, and anything that Courtney has done or does, or her offers, or her courses on sexuality or empowerment, we will give all that information as well, because as you can see, she's fabulous. She is the queen.
oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
So sending you much love. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.